35. Again, welcome to everybody. I know, Mimi, you are the new planning board representative, but the only problem is I can't have you vote tonight is until the Board of Selectmen appoints you next Tuesday, but you certainly can participate and do everything but vote tonight. So one of the first things on the agenda is to do just a reintroduction to our new members. Welcome to Anne and welcome to Andrea. I know that you weren't able to participate at our last meeting. So if we just kind of go round horn, I'll just kind of call on everybody briefly. You can, sorry, I didn't realize my video wasn't going. Sorry about that. You could just kind of introduce yourself. We had done this before, so we'll just kind of go round table before we reorganize. So Anne, well, how about we start with you and just give us a brief introduction to yourself.
I moved to Southborough 4.5 years ago. My profession is communications. I was a newspaper journalist and editor for quite a while, and then I switched to, I was the director of public information. I basically feel my contribution here will be outreach and communications.
Awesome, Anne. Thank you so much. Mr. Palmer.
My name is Joe Palmer. I've been in town about 6 years. I serve on Capitol from the start of it, and I serve on the 21 Highland Street Committee.
Awesome, Joe. Thank you. Mr. Martell.
Hello, Tim Martell. I'm on the advisory committee. I'm an IT director. About it.
Okay, great, Tim. Thank you. Mr. Wood.
John Wood, been in town just a little bit, about 40 years. My wife's, I think, 4th or 5th generation. Seen a few changes here. The EDC, the Economic Development Committee's representative. I'm also on SHOPSI and the Housing Authority.
Thank you, John. Mr. Luttrell.
Good evening, Mimi Luttrell. As I said, Marnie Houlihan had been representing the planning board and represented very well from the looks of that PowerPoint presentation she sent out. And I told her there's no way I can operate at that level. I'm on the planning board. I've been in town for 30 years. Also chaired the master plan committee and spent 13 years on the Open Space Preservation Commission prior to the planning board.
Awesome, Mimi. Thank you. Andrea?
Sure. My name is Andrea Hamilton. I'm one of the at-large members on the committee, and this is my very first Southborough committee. I've been in town for 7 years, but I'm a bit of a boomerang. I lived here for middle school and high school as well. So I'm excited and looking forward to being part of this.
Awesome, Andrea. Thank you. Before we move on to the reorganization, Tim, can I just ask you a quick question? Are you familiar with hosting the meetings? I know that Mr. Davis is doing it tonight, but is that something that you know how to do and you could potentially do for the committee, get them up and running and record? Or is that?
I could. I just don't have access.
Okay. So do you want to take over tonight, or do you want to sit with Jay or Tim and get some additional training how to do it, or are you comfortable with it?
I'm pretty comfortable, but I can reach out to Jay tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. So then we don't have to kind of keep Tim like we're sticking him around here tonight. So thank you, Tim. Much appreciated, both of you. So the next up on the agenda is the organization of the committee. I know one of the things we had talked about at the last meeting was because we were short a couple members, the committee wanted to wait until everyone was here. Now we're kind of in a conundrum because Ms. Luttrell is here as well. So I have a suggestion for the committee to consider tonight, to take a vote to make Mr. Wood the temporary chair until your next meeting. He can then take over running the meeting tonight. He's aware of what's on the agenda. I've spoken to him briefly as well. So is the board willing to consider that option to get you through your meeting tonight until your next meeting, when everyone will be a full member and you can take positions then?
I'd like to make a motion to appoint John Wood temporary chair until such time as the committee votes to formalize the position.
Is there a
we'll change that to an amendment
Second.
of next week when we actually form a vote. No.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'd like to
Sorry,
amend the
go ahead.
motion, to state- amend the motion to state that John Wood be temporary chair until next week when we vote on the official position.
Perfect.
you.
And Ms. Rubenstein seconded. Thank you. We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Rubenstein,
Aye.
just looking, thank you. Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Martell,
Aye.
Mr. Wood. Aye. I didn't hear you, John. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Hamilton.
Aye.
Okay, well, folks, I'm going to turn this over to John in 1 second. I leave you in great hands. He'll give Jennifer an introduction. She will be a valuable tool for you tonight with lots of information and can answer a lot of your questions. So I'm going to take my migraine head and I'm going to leave your meeting and know that you are all in good hands. So have a good rest of the meeting, everyone.
Thank you.
There you go,
Take care,
John.
hope
All
you feel
yours.
better.
Thank you. All yours.
So the first thing I really want to do is just for the organization of the committee, I think it would be best if we actually have a formal vote that we put it off to next meeting. If everybody's okay with that. And I mean, if there's anybody that has a strong opinion that they want to be chair and they want to speak up, maybe we could do it tonight. I will leave it up to the committee. I personally, like I said, last week when we didn't have everybody that was able to vote, I didn't think it was right to take the vote. And I'm the same opinion this week. So I would like to table it till our next meeting. Do I have a motion for that, or does it?
So
I make a
moved.
motion. I make a motion that we. Ann, did you have something to say?
I just said so moved.
Okay.
Perfect. Do I have a second?
Second.
Right, I have a second. So I'm just going to take a roll call vote as I see it to postpone it till our next meeting. Ms. Rubenstein,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton. You're muted, Ms. Hamilton.
Yeah, can I unmute there? Aye.
Mr. Martell
Aye.
and myself, aye. Mimi, I can't ask you yet. So, but I would assume you'd agree with me. So, all right. So that's taken care of. Moving on. Next item on the agenda: review discussion of ARPA guidelines. We're lucky tonight. We have both Carla McAuliffe, the town accountant, and we have Jennifer Thompson with Capital Strategic Solutions. She was hired by the town to consult and assist with navigating the ARPA guidelines and process. They can both speak to how the different categories are and what might or might not apply, as well as answer any specific questions for our committee. So with that, I guess I will bring on whoever wants to go first, either Carla or Ms. Thompson. We're lucky to have you both, so thank you very much for coming. But I do want to give kudos to Ms. Houlihan for that PowerPoint presentation that we got. I don't know if anybody's had. I printed it out. I've looked at it a few times, and it's awesome. It's just a big loss, big shoes to fill. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to take a look at that or some of the other stuff, and I guess we can start off with the board and committee of anybody who has any questions or comments for Ms. McAuliffe or Ms. Thompson, or if they want to start with a quick overview.
I didn't know if you wanted to go first, Carla. It's up to
You
you.
first. That's okay.
I didn't
Well,
know
thank
who's
you.
been on longer today, so I was trying to be nice and let you guys decide.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Jen Thompson, and I'll just give a very brief introduction of myself. So I work for a company called Capital Strategic Solutions. We're out of Marlboro. We all live locally, and we're all former municipal employees. So my particular background, I was a town manager. Before that, I was a chief financial officer, and I did a lot of work with federal and state funding. So we worked with the town of Southborough and Carla on your CARES and FEMA funding, which is some other COVID-19 funding that the town received. And then we're also working for the town on your ARPA funding on an as-needed basis. So as much or as little as you need. We're strictly an on-call contract, and the town doesn't get billed unless you need us. And we're really just here to help and kind of lighten the load a little bit for both the staff and the stakeholders that are involved. I will tell you that the main things that we help with in terms of ARPA are reporting to the Treasury Department, any sort of assistance that a city or town might need in terms of the administrative, financial, and procurement purchasing requirements, because it can differ a little bit with federal funding. And then we also help with outreach for communities that want to do some outreach on the ARPA funding and soliciting input from their residents and businesses. And it really does run the gamut. So we're working in 12 communities right now, some small, some really large, and some kind of in the middle. And everyone's style and what they're looking for is a little bit different. Some communities have a working group or an ARPA committee like you have. Some don't. The select board or the city council is handling it. Some cities and towns are doing a lot of outreach. And some cities and towns are doing just a little bit of outreach. They kind of already knew what projects they wanted to do. And they really just need help with reporting and project eligibility. A lot of times we'll come before a board like this and we'll do an ARPA presentation and kind of go over the allowable and not allowable uses. But you guys are way ahead of the curve. That PowerPoint was excellent that was put together. It really spelled out a lot of the things that we typically do go over. And I think, I think we did do that at a select board meeting for folks in the community. But if you're looking to do a lot of outreach, we can assist with that as well, or even just a little. So for example, tonight we were in Lynn at the city council meeting. They have a really robust public outreach because they have a lot of funding, and a lot of it is going toward nonprofits and businesses. And, a lot of sub-recipients. So we have to do a lot of neighborhood meetings and business meetings. But on a smaller scale, tomorrow night I'll be in Pepperell, and we're doing a virtual public outreach meeting. We did one a few weeks ago. It was really great. It was about 50 people from Pepperell on. We did a quick overview of ARPA, similar to what you had in your PowerPoint. And then we opened it up to the public for folks to provide their input on the type of projects they'd like to see, engaged in terms of ARPA. So, it's really up to the committee. We're here to help you as much or as little as you need.
When you said you were involved with the outreach for other towns, like what type of outreach did you guys do for the towns?
So that runs the gamut too. So some of our communities just want a survey up on their website. So we create a survey. Some want us to run the meeting. So like tomorrow night in Pepperell, I'll run the virtual meeting. We'll take the questions in the chat. We'll record, we'll record everything that's said and all the project ideas and compile them. We'll help with the flyer and the advertising. And then some, like I said, really want a more robust one. They have a dedicated website or a web page just for ARPA. Some want a lot of presence on social media. So, like I said, it can be as little or as much as you want, but we can help with kind of all facets of it.
Is that really, when you say some folks are putting up, things on a website, is that really open outreach? So looking really to solicit ideas, or is it kind of getting a pull on sort of pre-existing uses that are getting put forwards?
So some folks just want the website to just give some background and inform people of upcoming meetings. Some really want it to be interactive. So we have surveys and forms that folks can fill out in terms of project ideas or just even programmatic ideas. So they may not have a specific project in mind, but they may want to say, hey, we really think you should think about dedicating some of these funds to road projects or, public safety, those kind of general things. So it really depends on what you want. We can kind of design it to provide as much or as little outreach as you'd like.
Anybody else have any questions on outreach or anything with what you said? Ms. Rubenstein.
Okay, I'm muted. Wait a minute.
You're
Am I
good now.
muted
I'm
or
muted.
unmuted?
You're unmuted. I muted
Okay.
myself and tried to tell you you weren't muted, and that didn't work.
Okay. I'm curious as to whether other communities have, if it's preferable to have a wide open request to the community, what do you think as projects, or to have a few examples, say these are the 5 items that the committee is looking at, and do you have priorities? Does either approach work better than another?
So the one that I've seen work the best so far is providing some general guidance. So typically, if we're doing an outreach session or we're providing printed materials, we'll give the general background on what the funds can be used for and what it can't be used for. Because that kind of takes some stuff right out of the picture from the beginning. You know, folks know, well, wait a minute, I was thinking of this, but you can't even use it for that. Although you have a lot more flexibility now with the final rule to use the funds, which is great. And so providing that guidance, but then also what I've seen work really well is the ARPA committee or the select board and the staff will kind of give a suggestion of projects that are already being considered or categories of projects. For example, things in your capital plan, right? Those are things that the town has already been thinking about for years and planning for, and things that you might want to consider. So typically we'll either put up a slide, or if we're doing it in a print format, we'll kind of give, these are some suggestions, these are projects that were talked about, with the caveat that, you know, we're still open to new ideas, but this is kind of the direction that the town has been looking at. So I think a little bit of guidance does help, because for some folks, especially folks that aren't always involved in local government, I think it's overwhelming a little bit for them to think about what they want to spend the funds on.
Thank you.
And since we're talking about the discussion of the ARPA guidelines, can you give a quick overview for anybody that maybe not at the meeting tonight that's going to view it later on YouTube, or maybe they're just watching it on YouTube live right now and they can't really ask questions? So could you just give a quick overview of what ARPA funds are for, what we can and can't use them for, mostly what we can't, because there's more things that we can use than there is can. I think we could go all night long on things you can, because I've read the different guidelines and I get more confused the more I read it. So
yeah, and the new guidelines, you know, the final rule that came out, I think it's been 2 weeks now, but maybe a week and a half, that really did provide more flexibility in terms of what you could use it for. So it really is just kind of, like you said, those non-allowable uses. But I'll give you the basics, and then we also can provide something if you want to put it up on your ARPA committee page for folks that are looking specifically for ARPA. We can kind of list those up on the page for you if you'd like. So there are 4 uses, 4 categories. The first is a very obvious one, and it's for public health and responding to the pandemic and economic recovery from the pandemic. So things like vaccinations, COVID, contact tracing, prevention and mitigation in your buildings, which you've already done a lot of, but folks that still continue to need, you know, for example, items that assist with social distancing, those type of things. Personal protective equipment, funds for public health and public safety that are responding to the pandemic. And again, economic assistance to certain sectors of your population that have demonstrated an economic hardship. So for example, some communities offer utility assistance for folks that were hit hard by the pandemic. We've seen some that are offering mortgage assistance. Those type of things are in that first category. The second category is there's a provision that a city or town can provide what's called essential pay to workers that worked for the town that worked through the pandemic and did not work telecommuting. So so think about the folks that on the town side, it would be certainly your public safety, if folks worked in the town hall throughout the pandemic, your public works, those type of government employees. If the town chooses to, you can pay them what's called a premium pay for working through the pandemic in person or handling things that the public would have handled throughout the pandemic. That's the second one. There's some rules in terms of what you can and can't pay there. The third is your revenue loss category, and this was the one that really changed the most. So the town of Southborough is allowed to fund general government services for the amount of revenue that you would have lost in theory, based on a formula, the revenue that you would have lost due to the pandemic. So your local receipts and your revenue that you take in as a town, there's a formula that you can use that was put up by the Treasury to calculate what your revenue loss would have been or was because of the pandemic. What changed is, and you saw it in the slides that were provided to you, cities and towns now have the option of not using that formula and you can use up to $10 million if you have that much in your allocation. You can use up to $10 million in revenue loss without making any calculations. So for example, if the town of Southborough wanted to, because your allocation is less than 10 million, you could use your entire allocation in the revenue loss category if you wanted to. What's flexible and nice about that is the revenue loss category allows you to spend the money on any general government expense that you would have funded through your budget, basically, with a few exceptions. And we'll go through those in a minute. So it does give cities and towns broad flexibility in terms of funding things that would have normally been funded through your revenue. I would say with one caveat, that you just want to be cautious that if you're funding stuff through this category, that it's not reoccurring revenue. So, you know, in a few years, this money is going to be gone. And if you're thinking of using it to fund, say, operating expenses that would normally come out of your budget, you have to have a plan for what you're going to do when that money is gone. But we can talk about that further down the road. So there are four categories. The last one is infrastructure.
Before you get on to the next.
Yeah, sorry.
Mr. Palmer, I saw you had your hand up. Did you have a question on what you were speaking about before?
Yeah, she pretty much answered it, but I mean, and basically we as a committee could end today, advise the selectmen to dump all the money into the general fund. And then at the end of the year, when the money reappears, it could then be voted on by town meeting as to what to do with the money afterwards. Is that basically, because we could basically pay the general revenue, have the tax revenue come in, and then the money appears at the other end. I mean, it sounds like
So not
government
quite.
money laundering, but
No, so it's not quite like that. So you calculate what the revenue loss would be, or in your case, you really don't
I
need to
understand.
calculate. You don't need to
my
calculate
understanding
it
is that,
anymore.
that we already have an excess revenue loss of what we
Right.
get. So-
Right. And even if you didn't, you're below the 10 million, so you could use it. But you don't actually take that money and put it in as revenue. You still have to identify projects and then spend it on those projects.
Fair
What's-
enough, but
yeah.
so I appreciate there has to be an accounting involved in what
Yeah.
I was talking about. But if we earmark it towards all the expenses that we're currently paying, and then wait until the end of the year, the town would experience a surplus of if we didn't increase the budget from where we are right now, we've already essentially going to pay that. We would then have that money reappear at the end of the year. Pretty much.
Understood.
Is that pretty much correct? As
So
long
you're
as we did it-
saying
as long as we accounted for it properly, we could basically pay for projects and then have the money reappear as money at the end of the year for the town.
So I'll let Carla jump in, but I think you still would have to appropriate it so that it would have to close out to free cash, I think. But I'll let the town accountant answer that one to make sure I understand it correctly.
Well, Mr. Palmer, also we have to file reporting on these funds. So we need to identify what we're going to be using them for and
Sure.
also tie it to a pandemic need. So that was the issue with like CARES and FEMA funding. It's all tied back to the pandemic and how we're spending this money. What was the effect? And for ARPA, it seems we haven't done the reporting yet. It's going to be, they pushed it out until April, but it needs to be like measurable. Like how are we going to know that we made a difference with these funds? And to take it all and do that, I think that would not be advised. We could ask the Treasury that, but
Because essentially we could come up with $3 million worth of police and fire expenses. And then, as if they're general fund expenses, then we could pay for them with ARPA funds. And then at the end of the year,
ultimately, yes, like capital projects or whatever. There are some towns, some accountants I've been speaking to that, they're going to earmark their funds for capital projects that they've had on their list that they're going to be, using the funds for. Yes.
What do we have on our capital fund? What do we have on our capital plans for this year's budget? How much money are we talking? Do you know offhand what our capital?
I don't know offhand. No, I don't have that with me.
That's
I don't-
okay.
I don't think I can get
Well, it
that for you though. I can.
it doesn't necessarily have to be about this year either.
Right,
Depending on how,
exactly. You can
depending
pick
on
and
how this
choose.
is structured, it just has to be anticipated expense over the next year.
Yeah.
So there are lots. What I was alluding to was that we can put most all of this money towards current expenses, either in general fund or capital, and create a surplus for ourselves, because we've already voted to pay for all these things through town budgets. So then the money we can reallocate the money later to something else that we know is coming in that may not have been applicable later, because we're paying for things that we've already paid for.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We also don't need to, we need to encumber the money by 2024 and spend it by 2026. So we have a good long time frame to develop a solid plan and not make a rush decision to sort of, thoughtfully put together a piece, piece by piece track.
I'm not talking about rushing it, but I'm talking about allocating this money as quickly as possible towards things that are applicable to it, because a lot of the things that are applicable to it we'll be paying for anyway. And then the money that we're freeing up can later be used for whatever the town needs it to be used for. That's sort of the what I'm asking, inferring with what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think the caveat would be what exactly the committee would identify those funds to be, used for. Yeah,
sure.
Because with the revenue loss, it says, you can spend anything that you would normally spend, tax revenue on, except what Treasury, says you can't. Like, there's always a caveat. So, the devil's in the details with this money. That's what we found with the CARES and the FEMA money, as well as why we thought it was so important to bring in a consultant, is to kind of use this money. It's historic money, right? Who knows when we're going to be getting money like this again, but just to have a different view and use the money in the most thoughtful way, because there's rules with FEMA, and in the past 2 years it was like FEMA and CARES. Well, what can we do with FEMA and what can we do with CARES? And those shifted. I'm hoping that, they have this final rule with ARPA. So hopefully that'll be the ruling that's in place for a while. But I was talking with our FEMA rep, because we have claims in process with them. And they're saying now, well, anything that ARPA should pay, you should charge to ARPA. FEMA can deny things based on the fact that ARPA would pay for them. So now we're looking at the dance between ARPA and FEMA. So, just to have Jennifer have a different view and see what other towns are doing. I talked to other accountants and finance directors, but she sees it from a different view as a project manager for cities and towns. But it is kind of how are you going to make the most of the money you have, as well as what else is out there for funding and how it all fits together.
So I'll just add one thing, because I totally understand what you're saying, Mr. Palmer. So say, for example, in your scenario, you wanted to use what you're paying police and fire right now. I'll just use that as a general, because you had said that. So just keep in mind that you've only appropriated money for police and fire through your regular budget through June. So you'll do that again at your town meeting for next fiscal year. So the mechanism, like you mentioned, is if you were spending some of that money out of ARPA, rather than charging it to the operating budget, which you've already voted as a town between now and June 30th, that money would not get spent. And then eventually it would close out to free cash. But, and then you could put it in the stabilization fund, you could use it for other projects, those type of things. But you'd have to be cognizant of the fact that it's only till June. So you would have to still, if you wanted to do that next year, you'd still have to vote the budgets with that money in it, if that makes sense. And then the same thing would have to happen. The capital is a little bit different, because I assume, I haven't seen your capital plan, but I assume that, you're probably paying debt and interest. So you could choose a capital project that you were going to borrow money for, and then if you paid for it through ARPA, you'll no longer need to borrow. So you're not going to have to pay that principal and interest, which saves you money in the operating budget as well, which is great.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Miss Hamilton, I've seen your hand up for a while, and I apologize for.
No, that's okay. I just maybe extending a bit. Carla mentioned the approval process for allocating the money, and so again, I think to Mr. Palmer's point, it seems like it is very flexible, and we could apply it to a number of different things. But Carla, you made a statement that made it sound like, but there is an approval where we tie it directly to a COVID impact. So can you maybe talk a little bit more about what that process looks like and sort of how you get the final check on it and what sort of expectations there are around what could potentially get rejected, or if we think there are expectations, if we think it is as flexible as it kind of reads right now?
Well, we haven't gone through the process. I'm not sure if Jennifer could speak more on the reporting. I'm not sure what the reporting looks like for this federal money, but there is, as far as we know, quarterly reporting that's going to start for us in April. And I am assuming we're going to have some type of justification for the charges that we designate for ARPA. So again, I don't know what that looks like yet, but again, Jennifer, have you seen anything on that? You have. Okay.
I have seen a little bit on it. So you're absolutely right. So certainly the three categories other than revenue loss, you need to provide a documentation that ties it to the pandemic, or that it's an infrastructure project that applies. And, so you have to provide a project narrative and then details on the project. And then you have to also report on all the expenditures. And then the revenue loss category is a little more general. So you can elect in that report to use the $10 million, or like you said, I think your revenue calculation already had you up at that amount anyway. So you can either provide the calculation or you can use the $10 million. And then you need to explain what the general government expense is that you're using it for. I don't think I got to the part where I talked about what you can't use it for. So there are 4 things that are spelled out specifically in the legislation that you can't use it for. You can't use ARPA funds. One is you can't use it to deposit money into a pension fund. You can't use it to pay debt. So say you've already had capital projects and you're paying off debt and interest, you can't use these funds to pay the debt and interest on those projects that are already borrowed. You can't use it for any sort of settlement or a legal agreement or a consent decree. And then you can't use it to replenish your financial reserves. So you can't use it to say, you couldn't take the ARPA money and put it into your stabilization fund. So those are the 4 uses that are really spelled out in terms of what you can't use it for.
Yeah, but because we have that calculation in place and we're under the $10 million threshold, it really gives us a significant amount of flexibility because you could time most things back to that, correct?
It definitely does. So you'll still have to give a project narrative. So say, for example, I have a town that wants to buy an ambulance, and an ambulance is not spelled out anywhere else in the statute, but they're going to pay for it out of that general government expense. They would have normally put it through their capital budget. So instead, they're going to put it through the revenue loss category as a general government expense. So they'll just have to explain, this is for the purchase of an ambulance, or, just a general kind of explanation of what the funds will be used for. And then they have to provide, obviously, copies of the invoices and proof that it was purchased, that type of stuff.
Thank you.
Mr. Palmer, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, and in terms of equipment designated under COVID expense, I know that the technology committee already submitted for a Wi-Fi system, upgrade to our Wi-Fi system for our buildings and in the town, not in general, but for our public municipal facilities. And I was wondering, I don't know whether we can classify that directly under COVID, but I know it's an expense that certainly, could affect the way that our town interacts, or our government agencies interact in responding to something. Is there a justification we could use for paying for that?
So you could look at the broadband category and look if it qualifies. There's some specific rules in there that you have to, for it to be included as a broadband project. But you certainly could use it as a general government expense project. So that's something that you could fund out of the revenue loss category if you choose to move forward.
So we could pay for it pretty much without justification, just in that general fund category. Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Yep.
Thanks.
See, I love the final rule. It gives you so much more flexibility.
Now, what about infrastructure projects? Like, I know we're going to be doing things, finishing up downtown. Main Street project that we had paved one side of Route 30 and they're going into Main Street. If there's any other projects that are coming in, they can use it for that. Could you use it? What type of infrastructure things have you seen towns doing it for their capital?
So I
That's
have
not directly COVID related, but I mean,
Right.
you could-
So there's a whole category just on infrastructure, but that's primarily water, sewer, stormwater, and broadband. And it can include road work, but it has to be related to those water and sewer projects. So a lot of folks have, water main projects and sewer projects and those type of projects that are they're automatically going to take out of the infrastructure. But if you have road projects, if you have sidewalk projects, if you have park projects, those can all come out of that general government expense category.
What about like street paving?
Same thing. Yep. I know,
Yeah, we
there's a
do.
lot.
We do a general allocation every year through, it comes up on the capital for
Great.
this year. It's going to be 400,000 for streets. The sidewalks were delayed a little bit, but normally we were going to advocate for about 200,000 for sidewalks. And then that'll be coming up. So if we can fund those through general expenses, then that's certainly another place. And streets and sidewalks are very popular every time we've surveyed the populace.
Yeah, we have a lot of communities doing sidewalks. I feel like it's something that they always want to do and they never have the money to do it. So I think a lot of folks are viewing this as, look, this is a one-time expense. Let's use it for those type of projects that we always want to do and the community really needs, but we just, because of competing priorities and only so much money to go around, we never have a chance to do it. But yeah, sidewalks has been one that we're seeing across the board.
Can I throw another sort of sidewalk at you? For instance, the side on top of our normal allocation, say the sidewalk that runs down by the senior center where they did some inoculations for seniors and for others. Given its infrastructure to get to that senior center, could that be actually a separate allocation? Because we're looking at it as infrastructure related to getting people to an inoculation center?
Probably not, because the infrastructure category is more about clean water projects and broadband. So
Okay.
it's more, so probably not. I mean,
Just
you can
wondering
still
how
do
far I
it.
could stretch
You can
it.
still do it. You can still do it. You would just do it out of the general category.
When he was just talking about sidewalks, I live on the south side of town on Parkerville, off of Parkerville, and Finn School's over here. And once you get beyond Hubley Lane, is that Hubley Lane? I'm not sure. I'll say my road, Gilmore. There's no sidewalk all the way up Parkerville. There's a sidewalk that runs from Finn south down Parkerville, but nothing from Finn north all the way up Parkerville. So, you get a lot of kids riding their bikes, walking in the streets on most days and weekends when it's nice out, especially. So would like a sidewalk like that be covered, or does it have to have something to do with like what he was saying with COVID, where you have to, say it's an inoculation site or whatever?
It does not, as long as it's something that if the town of Southborough decided you wanted to put sidewalks in through your regular budget next year, you would put it in through your regular budget. You would either pay cash or you would borrow to do that sidewalk work. You can use ARPA funds to pay for those type of projects out of the general government expense category.
May I point out, John, I live on that section of the road, and I want everybody to know I did not put John up to saying that.
No, I walk my dogs on Parkville all the time, and going down to the schools and all that on the weekends. And a lot of times, you see these little kids. Again, I live on this side, so I'm a little partial to it. But I've always said it would be nice to see a sidewalk on the side of the road for the kids on that street too. So I didn't know if that would be covered or if it has to be, to connect to an MBTA station, or if it had certain rules of things like that.
It doesn't. Nope. You can fund that right through your general government category.
I muted myself, but I see Miss Hamilton has her hand up again. Thank you guys for being polite and putting your hands up and stuff. You guys I love this committee so far. You guys are awesome.
I didn't raise my hand the first time, and I realized that was a critical mistake right there. So I think that we also saw some paperwork where there had been some specific recommendations coming from your firm, Jennifer, but if I'm understanding them right, it looks like it was for other ARPA money that we can potentially petition the state for. Is that, I just want to make sure I'm understanding that piece right. Those weren't recommendations for this committee for this money. That would be separate money we could potentially ask for on top of, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So the state, in addition to this money that we're talking about, the state allocated $4 billion for ARPA related certain areas. And if you don't have a copy of that letter, we can get it to you, but it kind of spells out some specific categories. Some Southborough won't be eligible for, because there are some that kind of designated for economically disadvantaged communities. And I think some of the larger cities will get those, but there is some programs in there and some money in there that Southborough will be eligible for. So we keep a close eye on that as that rolls out. We also want to make sure that if you're going to get it through that state money, that you don't use up your local money, because you're already going to have it. So we'll keep a close eye on that stuff for you.
So
Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
no, please finish your thought. I apologize. I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to sort of understand. So is looking at those opportunities part of this committee's mandate as well? So will we be kind of evaluating if we're trying to petition for that additional money, or are we really focused on the currently allocated funds?
So I think in your charge, you're primarily focused on the local funds, with one exception. I think it's important for you to understand what's going to come through the state funding, as well as at some point we're going to hear what's going to come through the infrastructure bill as well. Because I think you need to know that when you're making your decisions on what projects you're going to recommend. So say, for example, the state decides that they're going to, give you money to fix a culvert in your town. I don't even know if you need to fix a culvert, but that's just an example. and that's going to be, well, there you go. So actually they are going to give money for culvert. So that's going to come through the state ARPA money. They're going to give cities and towns money to fix culverts. So you would want to know that, because you then wouldn't want to recommend taking that out of your local ARPA allocation. You should use the state money for that. So I think it's important that while you don't necessarily have to even advocate for those funds, you just need to be aware of them so that you're not using your local funds on them.
Okay.
We want to maximize your funding.
Okay, and you guys will be responsible for kind of helping us understand what other things are coming in, so we don't double allocate.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they're kind of funneling through a lot of different state agencies. So it was like one bill of $4 billion, but there's probably 30 agencies that are going to funnel out the money. So yes, we will absolutely do that.
Okay.
Thank you. That was going to be pretty much the same question. So Mr. Palmer?
Yeah, another odd use of money. But if we funded a purchase of property out of the general fund, would we be able to do that?
Yes.
Interesting. So, I would just say to this committee, my reason in asking that is twofold. One, there certainly are probably some parcels in town. I know of at least 2 or 3 that have been pointed out to me, but it's also another way for this committee to advise the town in a way of how to park money as well as an asset. Because if we could purchase property with the money through a general budget item, then that's another place where the town could gain an asset that it could then use at a later date.
Is that something that's a good question? Is that something we can do? And will we have to assign a use for that property right away?
No, you wouldn't have to assign a use. So the one that I've seen the most is land. So I do have some communities that are purchasing land, say, for example, if they're developing a well, they're purchasing land, those type of things. But if it's not prohibited to purchase land or property with your ARPA funds.
I know this is a stupid question that I'm going to ask it anyway, because I already know the answer to this is no, but I'm just kind of reaching at straws. So we couldn't use the ARPA funds to buy a building off the town that the town already owns for a different, like for housing or anything like that, such as like, I know that we have a building on the south side of town that they've been looking at repurposing and selling, and we didn't get any great offers in at the time. But I didn't know if like we could use some of this ARPA fund towards affordable housing to convert it or buy it or anything like that, or just things like that. I'm just trying to I know the answer is no, I can't do it that way. We already
You
own
can't,
it,
you
but
can't do
I
it.
didn't know
You
if
can't do it
there's
that way.
you can't double dip. I get
You
it.
can't, you
but it-
can't do it that way, but there is a provision in that first allowable use, the public health and economic impact for affordable housing. So certainly, certain affordable housing initiatives are eligible. I think we're going to see affordable housing money come through the state ARPA funds as well.
John, I'm actually on that committee, but like I was saying, if we bought an asset like land, you could then sell it at a later date to fund a project like that. But we'll see. That project has a lot of hoops to jump through before and get town approval before. I mean, we're probably talking a cycle of maybe as much as a couple of years before, because the grant cycle on the affordable housing stuff from the state, I was told by somebody in the state that oftentimes you get turned down the first time you go for it. So it may be 2 grant cycles, which may be 18 to 24 months before you get the state to give you the grant money for your project in the way that you want it. So the timeline on using ARPA funds for that might get really kind of tight in general, even if it's applicable. We'd have to find a way to stock the cash and then bring it back later.
Ms. Hamilton, I see your hands up.
Yeah, so I know we talked a bit about, projects, capital development, paying for things in our current budget. I know there are also some opportunities to do sort of direct economic relief with this money as well. So maybe can you kind of talk about what you've seen, if you've seen towns using it in that way. I know you can do sort of direct payments. I believe direct payments to individuals or groups or things that have been more impacted by COVID. So just understanding that a little bit more, maybe go through that a bit.
Sure. Yeah. So what we've seen so far, you're right. There's certainly a ton of stuff in the legislation that allows for that. So what we've seen in the communities that we're working in is some folks are offering mortgage and eviction assistance. Although you'll see, if you've seen that letter that I sent you, the state actually offers a really good program with a high income threshold because it goes by your area of the state. So there's a state program that provides assistance for mortgage, in particular assistance. But we've seen utility assistance. So folks that are struggling can apply to the city, and the city's using ARPA funds to help them with their utility bills. We've seen communities providing assistance to small businesses that were hit the hardest using their ARPA funds. Some folks are providing grants and some folks are providing direct payments to those small businesses. Certainly, some of our larger communities are giving money to nonprofits. Actually, some of our smaller communities are doing that too, especially in terms of mental health and the effects of the pandemic on mental health. We've seen some allocations going through for some of the nonprofits in their community that provide mental health support. So those are just a few of the examples that we've seen.
Do you think that I know that Southborough received some money in the past for mortgage protection and different things like that, and we had got a micro enterprise grant for small businesses. Do you know if any more grants like that will be coming from this? Is that something that you're purview to? Is like if we said, hey, we'd like to set something like that up, is that something you would say that's going to be coming down the line, so you might not want to use your funds for that?
Right. So we are seeing it through the state ARPA. We're seeing that a little bit, and I think we're going to see some more of that. What the eligibility requirements will be, what's tricky for ARPA. Sorry. I just had to change my location. Hold on one second.
I do see somebody in the audience had a question about how about tax assistance for real estate. I'm assuming you're assuming personal real estate, like a homeowner, Marianne, or you. I'm just curious what your question was on that. Yeah, taxes. Could it be? I'm pretty sure that's in there. When Ms. Thompson come back, I'll ask her that question. But that's a good question. Thank you. I feel pretty good now. I know that my house isn't the only one with a dead zone. If I went to about 6 feet that way, I'd lose you guys. So
yeah, I'm on the backside of a hill. I know what you're talking about.
It's funny. I used to have a different phone carrier, but I'm not going to use their name. But the dead zone was that side of my house, so it's like it's always something. And what's sad is I think maybe 3 miles from here, at most, is a cell phone tower. So it's like I don't get it. And she's almost back.
I'm here. Sorry about that. I had a meeting tonight in Lynn, and Mr. Purple had asked me if I would join after the meeting. So I'm not home. I'm on the road here. Let's use
I'm
a public
sorry.
space. No, that's fine.
Did you hear that? I had I had a question from the audience asking about tax assistance for real estate and its homeowners, like not commercial, obviously.
So that state program that I was talking to you about, and the one that I had highlighted in the letter, does cover that. So folks that had an impact from the pandemic and also meet the income qualifications, that can be a covered expense. It's a great program. I mean, like I said, the income thresholds are pretty high too.
That's awesome. I see a couple of members have their hands up. So Mr. Martell.
Hi. I just wanted to mention for the public that might be watching that anybody who may have need for relief can always contact Southborough's Commissioner of the Public Trust, which is always ready and willing to review applications of need and to help out. So if somebody's in need, they don't have to necessarily wait. I just wanted to raise that point. It's not a board that gets a lot of attention, but it's a board that provides a significant service.
And there is funding in it. Thank you. I forgot all about that. Mr. Martell, anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Palmer, I see you have your hands up.
Sorry. I had a sort of twist on the economic assistance, because I know that when I read there, although you're supposed to take into account what's happened in the past, you're really supposed to be advocating funds for future use, not for past grievance. So obviously, some businesses in town that had high stress might be able to make a justification to apply. But what I was more interested in asking was that we have a fair amount of commercial real estate in town that is vacant at the moment. Can the money be used in any way? And not that I'm advocating for it, but asking about it. Could it be used as a subsidy to help fill those spaces and get businesses to come in?
I have to think about that one a little bit more. So who would the money flow to?
Well, since essentially you'd probably structure it so you'd be offering rent assistance on a property for a limited period of time as an incentive to fill the space for a longer period of time. So you'd be looking to create a small subsidy to get people in there so that you could then get the commercial tax revenue that would pay you back over the longer term. It'd be an investment. It'd be investment in getting businesses into town. If it were used in that fashion, which I'm not saying that I'm advocating to the committee, but I'm interested in knowing if the funds are flexible enough to use in that manner.
I'd have to look at it. I think so. I mean, I think you could call that business and, economic assistance, but it's something I could definitely look a little closer at for you.
Okay. Like I said, I'm not advocating it. I'm just wondering if it's that flexible.
I believe we only have Ms. McCall and Ms. Thompson for about 3 more minutes. And if I remember correctly, we had a hard stop at 9. And I just want to say it's about 8:30 now. And if anybody has any more questions that they want to ask Ms. McCall and Ms. Thompson in the next 2.5 minutes. Anybody? Then thank you guys so much for coming tonight. And I know you both probably had really, really long days and probably another one ahead tomorrow. So I appreciate your being here and answering our questions and giving the guidelines. And I apologize now, but I'm sure I'm going to be emailing or calling probably both, or at least one of you, probably both, numerous times in the next 4 or 5 weeks, trying to understand more.
That's what we're here for.
Engage with you guys. Do we have a clear mechanism for how this works?
You can email me, Carla McAuliffe, at the accounting office, and then I can funnel the questions. I can either answer them or funnel the questions to Jennifer.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, happy to answer the questions. And I want to give credit where credit is due. Marnie did a great job on the PowerPoint. Mark shared that. It's like, wow,
Definitely. It was
why
excellent.
step away, you know?
It was excellent.
Yeah, very, very good. So thank you. Thank you for your time. We'll be talking soon.
Nice to meet
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night.
Bye-bye. You too.
All right, so our next items on the agenda is next steps, outreach and strategy evaluation. So let's talk about outreach, how we think we want to do this a little bit.
John,
Okay.
before you move on, in terms of Andrea's addressing the questions, I would like to propose that it just as a general rule that we send our questions to the chair to send to them. Just because that way, I mean, we can't talk as a group outside of the meetings, but there should be a mechanism by which we bring all that information back into a meeting the next time we meet. And so if we funnel questions to the chair and out, then the chair can then address, put that in the agenda to address the questions and information that come back. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just proposing that might be a way to do that.
That does make sense, and that's actually the right way to do it for a committee. So I apologize for not saying that a minute ago. So thank you for pointing that out. So yeah, all information, all questions will go to the chair that gets appointed and voted in next week. And then they'll reach out to either Mr. Purple or Ms. Thompson or McAuliffe and go from there. Just like I'm assuming all of the outreach questions and requests will be going to either the chair or someone in the townhouse to funnel them down to us moving forward as well. So, but that's a good call. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, do you want to move on to outreach? So does anybody have any ideas on how things that they'd like to do for outreach and how much outreach would like to do? Personally, I think the more publicity we get for this and more public input we get, the better. In this town, I know I've been part of a couple of surveys, and when you get close to 500 respondents, you did good. I'd like to see more than that if humanly possible. So I open it up to the committee on thoughts or of what they'd like to see for outreach, how much outreach, and what types of things you think we should do. Mr. Palmer, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I would go with what we were advised, in the sense that if we're going to do outreach, that we go for outreach in a way that allows us to easily categorize specific uses for the money, as opposed to a general outreach. Because as you said, if we get 500 responses, we may get 500 different responses, and we can't necessarily use them in a productive manner, and then people get a little upset. Whereas if we pick either certain categories or certain elements that we know that we can focus on, then I think that we have a really good way of getting stuff that we can have actionable. And if we funnel it in a way that we think that the money is best spent, then that also helps make our jobs easier. So if we pick popular things that people want to spend money on, all good. If we said to people, we could put it all in the general fund and free up money next year that town meeting can decide what to do with, that would, for instance, be an actionable initiative. And so if people wanted to vote for a tax relief next year, or they wanted to vote for a big capital project, or they wanted to do other things with the money, then that would be one way for us to pass it along and say, okay, maybe half the people think that we should put it in the general fund and let the town decide what to do with it later. That would be an easy way to determine things. Oh, sorry, my bad.
I was trying to go on my picture, I have little mute things there, and it was moving all over the place instead of realizing I could just go down to the bottom. Mr. Martell, I saw you had your hand up next, and then I see you, Ms. Rubenstein.
Yes, so there were a couple things. I'm happy to take them in turn. One of which is I just want to confirm, true or false, that this board is not looking to create its own projects.
Correct. True.
Okay, so we're going to operate like the Community Preservation Committee, where we're overseeing or advising a body that oversees this pool of money, but we're looking for other people to come to us, not with ideas, but with projects themselves.
That's how I understood it.
Okay, so that's important, right? Because there are going to be a lot of people in the town who are going to have great ideas, but we want people who are interested in doing projects, right?
Well, is that?
What do you mean by that?
So we're looking for, say, a board to come to us saying, we're looking to expand the bandwidth infrastructure in our town. And as part of that, we want to spend $150,000 to replace all of the Wi-Fi units in all of our town buildings. It's my board that's going to do that. Here's a plan of work. Here's the, I'm ready to go to quote, and give me a contact and I will give you monthly updates on this project, right? That is how the CPC operates. It's very different from saying, a random town person submits an email that says, I want a tax break, or I think that we should put more money into streets, which is a nice idea, but it's not helpful. It's not actionable is what I'm driving at, right? It's all well and good to have an idea, but who's going to own it? Who's going to action it? And how are we going to measure against it, right? So I think we need to be careful about how we choose to obtain feedback, because we need to provide explicit recommendations to the selectmen for how this money should be spent in a very specific way. Unless we're going to tell them, dump it all into XYZ. This is what I'm suggesting here.
I agree.
Can I just clarify on the use of the word project? Because I think that this money is far broader potentially than just a project, right? Like we could use, you could use this money and write a check to everyone in town, right? And call it relief, right? And I know that's something that it is an option that I see pop up on boards and things like that. I'm not advocating for it, right? But again, I think if we say the word project, we kind of push ourselves in a certain direction out the gate. I don't know what word to use instead, but I guess
whatever word
you want to be careful about. Yeah, but what you're saying is that you want to make sure people are coming with concrete, actionable suggestions that have budgetary numbers behind them, right? And that will be executed by someone other than this committee.
So a project at its very core it's a set of activities that have a defined start and a defined end. And it can be really small, right? So we could say the project we're recommending is to lower the town's overall tax. And it could have one step. Okay, so I'm not trying to define, narrow down what this board can do in the future, right? I'm just saying, we want to go to the public in a way that will bring back actionable ideas, is what I'm saying. That's all.
Yeah, okay, I agree with that.
Okay.
Long-winded way, sorry.
Ms. Rubenstein, I saw your hand up earlier.
I was going to define outreach from my point of view as both to the general public and also to the group within the town that is working on, as you say, projects, to get something concrete and actionable rather than just say, what do you want to do? And I think that it might, I'm not on other town committees, so I don't know how that process goes into the budget right now. But there have to be plans already being put into motion or being proposed. And that way we could discuss which of those are priorities from our point of view and then present them to the public. Rather than just say, give us any project and have 500 projects, as you say.
Yeah, we're going to need to develop a rating system, which I think Ms. Houlihan kind of already has as in her PowerPoint a little bit. And I don't think we're going to have any problems getting requests to fund for any other word project or different ideas from different committees and boards coming into us once they realize that we're meeting and going to be accepting these things soon. So with that, Mr. Palmer, I saw you had your hand up next.
Yeah, no, I was actually, I just wanted to build just for 1 second on what you just said, which was that, you know, I think we should expect and plan for to have and probably proactively schedule in the heads of committees like advisory, capital, you know, DPW, technology, bring them all in because they can put the project on the table that we're already going to pay for. Because if we can pay for things out of the general fund category that we're talking about, a lot of these, you know, actionable projects are already on the board, already scheduled, and we can just pick we can pick from that list, you know, a good amount that makes good sense for just right off the bat, and that'll help us to narrow down what we want to do with you know, other parts of the money. You know, if there are some other avenues that we really want to work on in terms of with, you know, whether it's employees or pay or incentives or other sorts of things, it'd be good to get a bunch of capital projects, as Tim said, off the table, including that Wi-Fi, which I know is already coming up in budgets and going to pass. So just a thought.
So I guess, Ms. Hamilton, I see your hands up. Give me 1 second. So I guess, so the big ones we want to try to meet with first, personally, you know, since I'm chair of the night, I can reach out to capital and see if the chair will come and give a quick overview of capital expenses coming up. Reach out to some of any other committees besides capital and advisory that we want to try to get in for quick overviews. And then once we get the request, we're going to need to start seeing everybody.
Yep. I would do John Parent from facilities, and I would do Karen Galligan from DPW.
I think we have to go down the list.
Yeah.
What about Board of Health? Like, right,
Yes.
so this money is initially for COVID, right? So do we have any kind of a rating where we need to see if there's still any sort of like urgent COVID related need within the town, right? From just a pure public health perspective, like, are we still looking to fund vaccine clinics, right? Stuff that maybe is a little more urgent.
I agreed. Yeah. Health, Board of Health, police, fire. Yeah.
So eventually we're going to go through the gamut, but I'm just trying to figure out who we could probably get in for the next meeting that I can reach out to, because we're going to have to schedule a meeting, and I'd like to have somebody come in. The DPW, BOH, facilities, and capital, I think, is all great. You know, if they want to either just send us something with an email, or I'll reach out to all of them and see if they can come to our next meeting. If we, you know, give, you know, if they each get say a 10 or 15, 5 or 10 minute quick overview, and then we can ask questions after that, you know, if we have follow-up questions or need more information. But I know we have a pretty quick timeline for this. What was it? I don't have it written down in front of me from the last meeting, and I apologize. For town meeting, we have to have it before the selectmen by, what was it, March 16th. And then I believe it was, for anything else, they want us by May 1st for this report. So that goes, I've learned in town that time goes by really quick when you have a big thing like this. So for the first one, I'll try to get those four that we mentioned tonight, you know, capital, facilities, DPW, and Board of Health.
What about the schools? It's kind of a big one.
That is a big one, but I think I'm just trying to think time wise, because I don't know the bandwidth, no pun intended with your Wi-Fi project, but I know that meeting rooms are at a premium for time wise. So I think we're, like tonight, we were limited for an hour and a half. So I don't know if we'd be able to have all these, department heads come in, hang around, and then not be able to get to them. So I don't want to overtax the meeting and not be able to get enough questions. So maybe I'm going to see if they can send us something, and then, a presentation before that of what they'd like, an overview, and then meet with us at the next meeting. And then at the next one, the new chair can figure out what are the boards and committees that we can schedule in. But I think personally, right off the bat, I like the capitals, DPW, and Board of Health myself, as well as facilities for the initial one. I'll listen to all of your ideas on that, but I think that's a full meeting right away. So, I'm sorry, Miss Hamilton, I saw your hand up just a second and I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's
about
okay. I just
that.
wanted to be clear. So we'll reach out to them. What are we asking them to come with? Are we asking them to come with sort of, do they have kind of high level need? Are we asking them to come with sort of like areas that they'd be looking to fund and maybe even like very rough budgetary estimates? Do we have a clear idea of what we're hoping to get out of them?
Just a quick, with the timeline we have, a quick synopsis of what they're looking for, what for me, I'd like to know what the next year, the couple of 2-3 years for capital expenses are coming at us. For facilities, pretty much the same thing. Board of Health, like you said, what are their needs? Are they upcoming? Are they being met? Do they see any serious funds being need to keep coming in, or any capital with those? And that's pretty much it from a DPW. Any projects that might be covered under this? That was a quick overview for me. Anybody else have any more or less that they think we should try to get out of them?
I would love to hear from the IT
At
From
that
Jason.
same, in the first one?
early on, right?
Yeah, I mean, and but my question is, Ms. Hamilton said, what are we trying to get from these department heads in this quick overview? Is there any specific information that we would like to try to get besides like a quick overview of what they think they're going to need? Ms. Rubenstein?
It might be useful to provide them the PowerPoint overview that was prepared for us, because I found that very useful in thinking about projects and what we might fund.
Oh, absolutely.
Town
I'm
might
gonna,
fund.
I think this week I'm gonna send out the PowerPoint that Ms. Houlihan made, which was awesome, as well as the ARPA guidelines that we got. I'll send that to the chairs of boards and committees and, say, hey, we're gonna be reaching out for ideas. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then, Mr. Palmer, I'm sorry, I just saw your hand up again. I don't know if it's been up or.
I keep putting it up and taking it down. But no, I mean, I would like to see a sort of don't want to say this the wrong way, but I want to see the quick hit list from each
Yeah.
department. What do they have right on the board that we're going to pay for anyway, that we can take off and throw through general expenditure and get it off the board? And like I said, I think whatever we take off the quick board that's already going to be paid for just frees up our money for later, so that we can help ourselves out. And I know, like Tim said, with technology, I know that Wi-Fi is on the capital budget, or it's going on the capital budget. There are lots of these things that are coming up. If we clear them off the board, we're basically freeing up money for the town to use later. So it's we don't lose anything by taking these quick hit capital projects off the board for the town. And I'm not saying we can't use it for other purposes and other uses as well, in terms of, like, I expect the Board of Health obviously has had a crunch for health expenses. We can easily fund some of those and do some other service activities, but we are helping ourselves enormously by getting these capital projects off.
If we pull how does that benefit the residents with their taxes? Does it help with their tax bill in any which way? I mean, we got to think of that too. This COVID relief is for, a lot of people are hurting in this town, whether you know it or not. It's an affluent town, but I know a lot of businesses are down 20, 30, 40%. You look at Zoomies, I'm just using some of the different restaurants, they can't get help, so they're closed on days. Wendy's closed down because they couldn't get help. So these are just little things, but
Yep.
If everybody lost 10 or 15% of their income, they're hurting. If we can, and then I know the taxes were going up pretty high. And if we can try to save the taxpayer a little bit of money, I'm all for that myself.
Well, we create
as well.
If we hit these capital items now, when we're going to have to pay for them anyway, the surplus at the end of the year, the town could vote to put it right back in and lower the taxes for the next year. So, I mean, we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're literally giving ourselves the money. We're just using it in terms of ways that ARPA will allow us to do by clearing these things off the books. And then the money will roll back in over the next couple of months as the allocated money isn't used, the money's then there. So they could actually lower the tax rate the next year if that could happen. But we've been going through a capital cycle of increased spending, which is one of the reasons why the tax rate keeps going up. And we've been paring it down in capital, and advisory and the rest of them. All the committees have been trying to pare down spending over the past couple of years. And, you may see 3 or 4%. Last year, I think it started out at about 9 or 10% increase, and all the committees got together and cut stuff all out so that we could get down to about 3%. So clearing off these capital things that are coming up are only helping us to keep the taxes down.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hamilton. I see your hand up
Yeah,
again.
so I guess in sort of thinking about the groups we have, right, where again, I think primarily what we'd be focusing on in the next meeting is looking at their capital expenditures, right? We'd be looking at those large scale projects. Do we want to start I don't know what group it would be, but I think maybe to John's point, right, like there are still businesses and probably individuals within our town who are kind of still dealing with crisis from COVID economically, Board of Health to cover health, but right. So is there someone to invite who could help us understand, if there are any services, right, that sort of are more urgently in need of funding that don't have other avenues right now, right? Because just thinking about sort of the intent of this money, it's first and foremost COVID relief, right? And sort of as we think about these sort of longer term, larger scale projects, I just want to make sure that we're not also missing maybe some smaller, more urgent need.
Good point. Mr. Palmer, I see your hand up was just up before Mr. Martell, so I'll let you go first. Then Mr. Martell.
I was just going to add for Andrea that Youth and Family Service and Shopsy might be a good place for us to invite some people in to start. That was just all I was going to say.
Yeah, I like youth and families. I like both of those. And I know we're trying not to like overbloat a meeting, but again, just when we're thinking about sort of the initial touch points, I do think it's important that we include folks who can speak to any kind of urgent need within our town.
Well, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna email all of them asking if they have any urgent needs or requests. As a general questionnaire to reach out to. For now, I'm gonna have them send it to Mark Purple to send to us because I'm just the chair of the night. So I'll have them send it there, and that way it can be disseminated to us and go from there. So I agree. The Youth and Family Shopsy, it might even be something at we have a food pantry in town that I volunteer at, and you'd be amazed at how many people in town use it. I remember the first time I went there, my wife was going to be working with somebody, and the other person couldn't show up, and they asked me to come in. I'm like, how many people are going to come into the food? I was shocked at how busy it is, and how I know that they've been impacted by COVID because like I said, I volunteer there, and sometimes the shelves are pretty bare of things that we take for granted. So I think we'll reach out to all of those.
Youth and Family Services be like a useful, like a good kind of place to start, maybe?
I think so. Absolutely. So I'll put that. Do you want me to try to put them on our next meeting as well as the other four?
Yeah, I think I'd like that. I don't know what other folks think.
I think so too. I think those are the big core ones. If we talk to Capital Facilities, DPW, Board of Health, and Youth and Family, because Board of Health and Youth and Family, that kind of goes hand in hand with me a little bit, because they work. I think they work relatively close to each other. I could be totally wrong on that, but and then
I think Youth and Family works hand in hand with schools a lot.
Yeah, but I think I can try to get schools in as well, but I think that's an awful lot for one meeting to have all those people. I was the chair of advisory for like 3 of my 10 years on it. And, when you start getting too many people coming in with requests and to talk about needs and things, we'd meet till 11 o'clock at night. So I'm okay with that if you all are, but that's starting to get to be a pretty busy meeting.
Yeah. Why don't we plan on dividing that over a couple meetings?
That's what I was thinking. So
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But for the first meeting, for our next meeting, I'm going to try to get people into, do we agree capital was one, right? Biggie to see what's coming up, just a quick overview. And we had said facilities, DPW, and Board of Health. And I can throw Youth and Family in that as well. And I think I think that's a pretty full night. And then, after that, we can try to get schools, IT and some of the other committees like SHOPSI and such to come in. Does that make sense?
I think
Yeah.
it's quite a few. If 5, it's going to be quite a few, to be honest, if in my experience with meetings, but
Well,
if people
hopefully,
are willing to stay.
yeah. I think Capital can give a quick overview and probably, Mr. Palmer, you're on Capital, aren't you?
Capital has a hand in lots of things.
So Capital could give a pretty good overview of in probably 10, 15 minutes. We could probably get a pretty good handle on what
You get
the big projects
a lot
are
of the
coming up.
you get a good broad view of a lot of the capital stuff throughout a lot of the departments, but each department head will have we can fund out things out of general expenses too. So now that we're clear to do that, all the department heads can shovel smaller things that may not even have arrived in capital or go to capital. Capital has a 10,000 cap, but even still, I mean, there's lots of things that go through the general budget that we never see. So talking to all the department heads will be a good idea as well. We don't have to make them long. We can just ask them for a quick, 1, 2, 3. And
I agree with that. And then we can always have follow-ups after that. And if I can get an email back from them, before, like, I don't know about you or anybody else that on any other committees, I like to try to I don't really like discussing anything that I've gotten the day of the meeting or even the day before it gets, I'll be honest, I sometimes just don't have the time to read it or absorb it the way I think I should. So anything that we get the day of, if somebody sends up our quick hit the day of our meeting, I think that's kind of might get pushed off to the next one.
John, you said we have a hard cap at 9.
Yeah, I thought somebody said they had to leave at 9 tonight.
Oh, okay. I thought we had a hard cap because of the system.
No, somebody
Okay.
said that they could only stay till 9. So, but all right. So my action item is I'm going to reach out to all the boards and committees with all the ARPA stuff that we've received so far. The PowerPoint and the guidelines, and ask them if they have any, if they think they're going to have any requests, and if they are, to forward those in an email off to Mark Purple to forward off to us. And then I will reach out to Capital Facilities, DPW, Youth and Family, and Board of Health, and see if they can give us a quick hit overview at our next meeting, and if they can send us the stuff first so we can kind of see it, and then just give us a quick overview. And then we can always ask follow-up questions after. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. I might say just one thing in the email that you send. You might say that mention the general fund rule, because that will, despite all the stuff in the presentation, what really comes down is if it can be funded through a general fund expenditure, it's pretty much you can put it on the board. So that opens up to an amazing amount of stuff that we can cover.
How did you say that? If it can be what?
If it can be funded through a general fund expenditure, we pretty much have a pretty huge open door to what we can allocate funds to. That's a huge loophole in the old requirements that were in the stuff that I read beforehand.
But don't you think then you'll start seeing a lot of boards and committees saying, oh, we could use it for contracted services because that's coming out of the general fund. We could use that for printing because that's coming out of general fund.
We may see some of that, but if we ask them for a 1, 2, 3 list, we're sort of limiting them to saying the most important things on their schedule. But we can fund a whole lot. If it's general expenditure, it means that we're not limited to the type of expense, just what we choose to expend. That's what I mean. So I don't want them to leave something off because they think it won't apply under the classification rules, because we can pretty much get through it to pay for almost anything with a general expenditure.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. That does. And I like the 1, 2, 3 list, I'll give them top 4, to let us know. And we'll get that to all boards, committees, and departments and see. I'm sorry. Mary Ann, I apologize. I just saw that you put all town department. I don't know what you mean with that.
I think she was referring that we should be talking to all town departments.
Agreed. I will. I'll be sending this off to everybody, and I apologize for just seeing that over there now. It's very small on my screen and it didn't pop up. I'm sorry. Mr. Martell, I just saw your hand up and now it's gone. So
I'm sorry, I was just looking at the attendees. I hit the wrong button.
okay. Yeah, I'm trying to bounce between them myself and I just figured out to leave that whole side open on that way.
John, you're sending this out to all the town departments with the
All boards,
invitation
committees.
going out to the,
Yep.
okay, was it the 5 and was there going to be a request to come back with the top 4, maybe like
Yep.
preparation to give like a 5-minute just summary overview of them, and then we can open it up to questions? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, but the first one to be prepared to come in with a 5-minute overview will be the capital facilities, DPW, Board of Health, and Youth and Family, at our next meeting, if they can attend. And then I'll get that out tonight or tomorrow to everybody. What we got next? And then we still have strategy of evaluation. I think with doing the hit list of the top 4, that's a good start. And then once we get all the requests in, we'll have to figure out at our next meeting how we really want to evaluate and rate all these. I don't think we have time to get to that tonight, unless you guys want to move forward on that, and I'm okay with that, or if we can do it for the next time.
I think
Yeah.
next time,
Okay.
considering our
think-
time restraints.
I think it'd be helpful actually to see the stuff come in, and then have an idea of what we're looking at, because
I agree.
we may choose to use a different strategy when we see what comes in, because some things may just make so much more sense, even though, they didn't at first.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Big question then, I think, so we'll deal with that in the next one. Then we have, next thing on the agenda would be any other matters properly before the committee. I don't think we have anything on that yet. And then we have adjournment next after that. But before that, we really need to figure out our next meeting. I think it should probably be with the turn time that we have to come up with this report. I'm thinking next week. I think
That's
we're
fine.
probably going to need to meet weekly. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what anybody else's thoughts. They think we can pull this off bi-weekly. We can try that. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Ideas?
If we're really bound to the schedules of the people we want to come in, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think if we do the next, say, 2 weeks, we did weekly and got all that stuff in the door, then we can take a moment to pause and breathe, build our we can build a little evaluation template, and that'll, then the processing will be a lot easier. Depending
Yep.
upon, Ann brought up the outreach. So the only sort of monkey wrench, if I see throwing in that sort of an idea, is if we want to reach out to the general public as a whole and try and do some sort of surveys or other sorts of things, that's going to be a much harder avenue. But it's not that it's not worth doing, only that it has to be done so quickly. And so not just creating the survey, but getting all the awareness around the community to fill it out. So I don't know all the ways that we'd want to try and handle that is all.
Would it make sense to have sort of a short list and sort of use the next couple meetings? Maybe what if we did I don't know. So we're saying the next 2 meetings would be for folks to come in and kind of make pitches, right? Would it make sense to have a 3rd meeting that's more of an open community forum to talk about has come in and see if there's additional feedback to have? Or do we want to kind of evaluate what comes in first and then maybe go out with the survey once we have a short list? I mean, is there some sort of a way we can kind of
Has anybody done a survey in town
Yes.
on the committee? And,
Yep.
and what was your response rate, or how hard was it to get people to fill it out?
It was actually pretty good, but this was for the town manager review committee, and we spent a lot of time up front collecting data, reviewing that data, and then crafting a survey that was fairly targeted And we got a good response.
What
How
kind
did-
of
how-
numbers, if I may ask?
This was years ago. I can't give you.
What were the initiatives that you used to actually get the public aware of the survey and get it in front of them?
So it was a Survey Monkey survey. It was posted on My Southborough. I think it was posted on some Facebook areas. I think it was sent through the rec department through various distribution lists. It was probably posted on the town website. I believe that now, don't quote me on this. This is a while ago. I think we brought a paper into a town meeting and left it with all the other stuff at town meeting for people to pick up so that they could go to it. I think we begged people to do it at town meeting, if I remember correctly.
All right, because some of those things we could definitely do, and some of them, I mean, we do have such a limited time frame to flip the survey and to get the stuff in. So we'd have to use, expedient avenues like the emails and signage, that sort of stuff. Maybe there are also some Facebook lists that have a lot of residents on them that we could probably get. I know my neighbors on one, and some other people I know are on some. Pretty sure we all know that. So we could probably flip that. And I think a lot of it would come down to as we talked about before, the types of responses in categories that's manageable for us to do, which that's probably the key to making it a good success.
Okay.
So do we want to table sort of figuring out what we want to do with it until next week? when we
For
have the
public out,
back?
yeah, I think we should table the public outreach till our next meeting, but I definitely think the public should be involved and we should have some type of a forum to see what they want. I found in the past, standing at the transfer station, got a lot of information out in the past. And for some reason, I always do it in the wintertime. Gosh forbid that I do it in the spring when it's warm. But
I was going to say not it.
I know.
Unfortunately, everybody has trash.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we'll table that discussion for public outreach for that. So our next meeting, what day works for people next week?
Is the same day, same time work for people?
I can make that work.
That's for me.
You potentially pull it up to 7.
Actually, that would be today Wednesday. What day is today? I don't even know what day.
Tuesday.
Today's Tuesday. So next Tuesday is a selectmen's meeting as well. So does anybody have any conflicts? I know one of the boards I'm on was going to be meeting with them, but I can defer that.
That'll be a problem meeting. That might be a problem meeting with some of the department heads.
Yeah. So could we do Wednesday of next week? Would that work for people or any? I guess I'll do whatever works for. I can make pretty much anything work for myself next week.
I
Except
can't
for
do
Tuesday.
Wednesday.
Okay. What day could you do, Tim?
I could do Thursday. I can do.
That's fine.
I can do Tuesday. I can.
All right. Tuesday might be difficult just because of selectmen's meeting. So we could do Monday, but that's really quick. I don't think we'd get the adequate time for responses. Thursday, say 7:30, 7:30. Does that work?
I can make that work.
I
Any
can do
chance
it.
we could pull it to 7? Do folks are folks able to start at 7 more generally?
I can.
Okay.
I can be a little late. I have a basketball practice that night, but
Yeah.
can-
I mean, if we have a quorum, we can start and then just, any response I can send it to you. So how late do you think it'd be?
20 minutes, half an hour.
Let's just start at 7:30 if that's okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Just try to
I get it.
the kid bedtime, but yeah, I can make it work next week.
Okay. So next Thursday at 7:30 will be our next meeting. And then, Tim, I'm going to ask your help. I'm going to ask for any public comment. We have 2 attendees. We have Mr. Stivers in the audience and Marianne. And Marianne's been the one that's been asking the questions in the chat. And Sam just put recent surveys by the MTC, the EDC, and the Noise Bylaw Committee got over 400 responses each, which is pretty good. you know. So I will, Mr. Stivers or Mary Ann, if you want to speak, I can have Tim pull you over as a panelist, and if you have any public comment. Can they raise their hand? I think they could raise their hands, right? Sorry, I apologize. I'm not very great with this, so seeing none. And we have our next scheduled meeting for next Thursday at 7:30. I'll try to get a room and get that taken care of. It's been a while since I've had to schedule a meeting. That goes to Jason at IT, correct? When you want to schedule it, I'll figure it out.
You can go right through the website,
You can
Schedule
schedule
it.
right through the website.
through your email. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Perfect. So I'll get that, I'll get the room and get that set up for next Thursday at 7:30. I'll reach out. Again, I'm going to send the general email with all the forms and stuff and ask questions to all the department heads and boards and committees tomorrow or so, maybe even later tonight. And we'll get that in. And then next week on the agenda, we'll have the organization of the committee. If anybody can think about running for chair, vice chair, or as any strong thing, we can talk about that then. If anybody wants to take the minutes every week, last week, what we decided we'd do was, we were going to rotate doing the minutes because that's worked for other people. So I guess that would be it. And so we'll take care of everything else next week.
John, thanks.
You
Well,
did a
terrible.
great job as chair,
you.
John.
I don't have the bandwidth. I wish I did. I really wish I did, because I don't mind, but I just, in another week, you guys would be hating me throwing rocks at my house when you go by, and then at me, and I know I'd be terrible. So, but thank you. But if you guys can think about that for next week, and if anybody, we can get that. I'll put that on the organization of the committee. I don't think we need the review and discussion of ARPA guidelines on there anymore, or should we keep that as a standing thing in case anybody asks any questions for just open meeting law? I think it's not a bad idea to have that on there.
Agreed. I think it's a good idea.
And then I think next steps should always be a standing thing, for the continued discussion of outreach and strategic evaluation. Makes sense. Anything else anybody thinks should be on the agenda? Once I get responses from anybody that can, of those initial 5, I can put that,
Did you have discussion of survey on there, or do we consider that in the outreach category?
I think that would be under outreach,
I think so too.
but I can outreach quite possible survey. I'll put up possibility survey vote may be taken. How's that sound? Just to be safe. And that's that. And, I'll have it, if any of those committees get back to me, put discussion with that committee on there and in order. And I'll probably, I'll try to put a time on that, to give me each like 5 or 10 minutes. And, obviously I've never seen anybody not go over. But, I'll try to, at least if I tell them, 5 or 10 minutes each to give their presentation, that might keep us relatively quick. So, all right. Any
John,
other?
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
That was my next thing to ask. So yes, I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
And we have a second. So I'm going to do a roll call vote as I see it. Ms. Rubenstein,
Aye.
Ms. Palmer,
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton,
Aye.
Mr. Martell,
Aye.
and myself, aye. Mr. Trell, I'm assuming if you could vote, you'd say, let me go home. So unanimous, everybody. Thank you so much. I call the meeting adjourned at 9:13. And everybody have a wonderful night, and I'll see you guys next week. And thank you for everything.
Thank you all.
Night.
Bye.
Thank you.